It's time for Hands on Tech. This week, Sam Abuelsamid has his review of the Audi E-Tron, Audi's new electric vehicle. Hands on Tech comes to you from Twit's LastPass studios. Keeping passwords on notes or spreadsheets, that just doesn't work anymore. LastPass easily keeps track and creates unique passwords for every site you use. Visit lastpass.com/twit.
This is Twit.
This episode of Hands on Tech is brought to you by Molecule. Molecule is reimagining the future with clean air. For 10% off your first air purifier order, visit molecule.com. Enter the code HOT.
It's been about a decade since the birth of the modern electric vehicle. At that time, we had very few options. The Nissan Leaf, the original Tesla Roadster, and of course the Chevy Volt, which was more plug-in hybrid than electric, but we'll let it slide. Over the last decade, we've had a bunch of other EVs come to market. But not everybody was into EVs in 2010, including the Volkswagen Group. At the time, Volkswagen was trying to sell something they called clean diesel. Well, as we now know, clean diesel wasn't really quite so clean. And after that scandal broke in 2015, Volkswagen Group completely pivoted towards electrification. And they're now planning to have 75 different electric vehicle nameplates on the market by 2025. They launched their first two dedicated electric vehicles in 2019. The Porsche Taycan, which we haven't yet driven, although I have had a ride in it. And this one, the Audi E-Tron. It's a really nice car to drive. Let's take it for a ride. The first thing you'll notice when you get into the Audi e-tron is that it's nothing like being in a Tesla. Rather than going for the sort of modern minimalistic approach that Tesla has taken, particularly with the Model 3, but also with the S and the X, Audi decided to go for something that is more typically Audi. Back in September of 2018, when they did the global reveal of the e-tron, they explained to us that what they were aiming for was to create an Audi that was electric, something that would appeal to customers that wanted the traits of an Audi. So what you see here looks very much like any other modern Audi. Really nice materials, very typical of Audi. Very nice leather, some Alcantara on the door panels, soft touch materials everywhere, real wood trim on the top along the dash here, and also typically of modern Audis. You've got dual touchscreen displays here. So there's actually three large displays, two in the center stack that are touchscreens, and then what they call their virtual cockpit digital instrument cluster display. And the two center stack displays here, the lower one is primarily used for climate controls, so heated seats, ventilation, and so on. And then the upper screen has other vehicle controls as well as the main infotainment system, so your navigation, audio system, and so on. One thing that's unique about Audi's approach to their screens, it's not the typical, when you touch your tablet or your phone, you actually have to press. It's more along the lines of what you'd get with Apple's modern trackpads, which don't actually physically move, but give you a haptic feedback that makes it feel like a click. So let's go for a little ride. First thing, the shifter is rather unique. Instead of having a big shifter that actually physically moves back and forth, there's actually just a switch here on the end of this handle that sits in the center console. You push it forward to engage reverse, and you'll see that the backup camera and the overhead 360 view camera light up. And then use your index finger to push this switch backwards to engage drive mode. You may be able to hear the sound, the humming sound that this e-tron is making as I drive along through the neighborhood here at low speed. Below 20 miles an hour, modern EVs almost all make some sort of sound to provide alerts to pedestrians to let them know they're coming, because unlike an internal combustion engine vehicle, you're generally not going to hear this thing coming at you. So driving down the road, the e-tron is actually very quiet, just as most EVs are. Most of what you hear coming through the vehicle is road noise from mostly from the tires. This particular test unit has the optional 21-inch wheels, and it's running on all-season tires, but you can also get the base model on 18-inch wheels, which will actually give you a little bit better ride quality. One thing about if you opt for the bigger wheels, and this is true of all vehicles, if you opt for bigger wheels and tires, you end up sacrificing some ride quality because you end up with tires that have a shorter sidewall, so they're not as compliant when you're going over some rough pavement. So this first generation e-tron fits into Audi's lineup roughly in between the midsize Q5 and the larger 3-row Q7 SUVs, the conventional crossover utility vehicles that Audi sells. It's about 4 or 5 inches shorter than a Q7, about 8 inches longer than a Q5, and unlike the Q7, it's not a 3-row, it's a 2-row, so it's a 5-seater, but it's a very comfortable 5-seater. It's on the larger size for a 2-row SUV. Passengers in the back seat will have lots of room to stretch out, and you also get lots of cargo space in the back. So as with all electric vehicles, the e-tron incorporates regenerative braking as one of its features. Normally it defaults to an automatic mode. When you lift off the accelerator pedal, we'll just coast, so it doesn't do any regen. But there's paddles that look much like shifter paddles on the back of the steering wheel here, and the paddle on the left is marked minus, the plus is on the right. If you tap the minus paddle, you can manually control how much regen you get. So you can see that when I lift off now, I've put it on the maximum regen mode. When you lift off, the vehicle slows down quite noticeably. If you don't like that, if you prefer a more traditional approach that feels like an internal combustion engine vehicle, then you can turn off that regen when you're coasting, and it'll just coast and maintain your current speed. That's not as efficient. You won't recapture as much kinetic energy and put it back in the battery. So it's generally a good idea to go with more regen if you don't mind the way it feels. So I've been driving this vehicle for the last several days, trying to find out how much actual real-world range I can get out of a full charge in the battery. One of the complaints when this vehicle launched last year was the rather mediocre EPA mileage rating or range rating that it has, which is only 204 miles, which compared to any of the Tesla vehicles, especially at a comparable price point, is about 30 to 35% less or more in some cases. One of the things that Audi's done with the e-tron is they've taken a very conservative approach to managing the battery because what they want to do is ensure the durability of the battery over the life of this vehicle. And so even though this car has a 95 kilowatt hour battery pack, lithium-ion battery pack, which is almost the same size as what you get in a long-range Tesla Model S or Model X, they're about 100 kilowatt hours. Audi's actually only using 88% of that capacity, so there's actually only 83 kilowatt hours available to use. But even within that range, it's still not as efficient in real-world driving as a Tesla or some other smaller electric vehicles like the Chevrolet Bolt. So this particular e-tron, it has the Prestige package. So the e-tron is available in the US market with two different trim levels, the Premium and the Prestige. And the Prestige comes pretty much loaded with almost everything. There's a few options available. This one has the technology package that adds in features like a heads-up display and the full-blown driver assist system. You get things like adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist and blind spot monitoring is standard, but this builds on top of that, adds some additional capability to it. The driver assist system in the e-tron does have lane centering capability, but it's not as aggressive as what you'll find in a system like General Motors Super Cruise or Tesla's Autopilot. So depending on the speed you're going through a corner, it may not actually be able to hold you in there, and it's not designed to be a hands-off system like Super Cruise is. So you do have to keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road. One difference that the Audi has relative to the Teslas is that rather than just relying on a torque sensor in the steering wheel to detect if your hands are on the wheel, there's actually capacitive sensors in the steering wheel rim, just as GM has in their Super Cruise system. So if you do have your hands off the wheel, after a few seconds it will alert you to put your hands back on the wheel. and you see an icon in the steering column, and all I have to do is touch the wheel. I don't actually have to fully grab it. I don't have to jiggle it around like you would in a Tesla to indicate that I'm still here. All I have to do is put my hands on the wheel and it'll detect. So one of the interesting capabilities that the E-Tron has, the camera that's used for the lane centering and lane departure system also reads speed limit signs and other traffic signals. And so what it can do is, when you have the cruise control set, I currently have it set at 45 miles an hour, which is the speed limit along this road right now. If you come to a zone where the speed limit drops, it will automatically reduce your set speed down to that new speed. One of the things it'll show you in the instrument cluster is, as you approach a curve, or in this case a roundabout, it actually slows down the vehicle automatically so you can go through safely. So I have not touched the brake pedal, and it dropped my speed down from 40 miles an hour down to 25 miles per hour as I went through this roundabout. And then it will automatically resume the speed that I had set. When you get back into a higher speed zone, it can automatically update that as well. So if I get to a place where the speed limit increases to 55 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour, it'll automatically update my set speed on the cruise control and go up to 55 miles per hour. So I'm approaching an intersection right now where there's a stop sign, and even though I haven't touched the brake pedal, the car is already starting to slow down, and it's slowing me down because it knows on the map that there's an intersection here and there's a four-way stop sign. So it's already dropped my speed down to 25 miles per hour. And I'll just bring it to a full stop here. It won't actually bring you to a full stop. So this should not be considered a full self-driving system by any means, but it is a very useful driver assist system.
This week's Hands on Tech brought to you by Molecule, M-O-L-E-K-U-L-E. Molecule uses breakthrough Pico technology to break down viruses and pollutants like volatile organic compounds on molecular level. Their technology has been tested by science and real people, and allergy and asthma sufferers are getting an all-new experience. Choose Molecule Air for large rooms or the Molecule Air Mini for smaller ones, or create a bundle to provide air purification for your entire home. For 10% off your first air purifier order, visit molecule.com, enter the code HOT at checkout. That's MOLEKULE.com. Code HOT.
The infotainment system in the E-Tron, like all modern Audis, has support for both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Audi's navigation system includes Google Earth as part of their interface. When you pull up their maps, you actually see a satellite view, an aerial view of the roads as you're driving down the road. You can also get that same view in the instrument cluster when you switch to the navigation mode. So you'll actually see an aerial view of where you're driving as you drive down the road. Among the other features that Audi includes in the E-Tron, as they do in many of their newer models, is full support for Amazon Alexa, and it's actually built into the infotainment system. So if you have an Alexa account set up, which I don't have set up right now, you can configure that and use that to access your Amazon Music account, or to do any of the other functions that you would do with an Amazon Echo device when you're at home, without actually having to have an Echo device. So, if you have some smart home features like automatic lights or thermostat or other things that are controlled through Alexa, you can actually control those directly from the car. So as you're driving home, for example, you can tell it to turn on your exterior lights or open your garage door without having to press any buttons. You can just use voice control for that. And as I said, you can also use it to play any music that you have. So the seats in this car are really comfortable, as they typically are in any Audi vehicle. Very nice materials. It's really well put together, great fit and finish, and it really feels like a luxury vehicle. And one of the knocks on Tesla, as good as Tesla vehicles are in many respects, at the price point that you pay for them, compared to comparable premium vehicles from other brands, they don't actually feel that luxurious most of the time. Obviously you're giving giving up something here, for the Audi relative to Tesla in terms of range and performance. This is not a slow car by any means, but it's not going to be able to drag race against a Model X performance. It'll do 0 to 60 in about 5.5 seconds when you enable boost mode, but it's really designed, to be more of a mainstream product, not a performance vehicle. Audi is working on a performance variant of the e-tron that's going to be coming out probably sometime in 2021, I think. And so we've seen that they're working on a 3-motor variant. This one, like most Teslas, has 2 motors, front and rear, up to 200 horsepower each. In the standard mode, they actually put out about 175 horsepower each, so about 355 horsepower total. And then when you enable the boost mode, that'll get you up to a little over 400 horsepower. Later this year, Audi is going to be introducing a new variant of the e-tron called the Sportback, which rather than having the sort of SUV, traditional SUV wagon kind of horizontal roofline all the way back, instead it features a sloping rear back, so it's more coupe-like. And that one they're actually going to be making some changes in the battery management system to use more of the battery capacity. They're finding so far that their battery durability is better than they anticipated. So it will actually have more range, and it's expected to have an official range rating of about 220 to 225 miles per hour. And eventually those changes will probably be migrated back into the standard e-tron as well. And going forward, e-tron is the badging that Audi is going to be using for all of their plug-in vehicles, which is going to be primarily battery electric vehicles, but also some plug-in hybrid models. The electrical system in this vehicle is a 400-volt electrical system, which is typical of most current EVs, and it supports charging rates of up to 150 kilowatts. And it also has a very robust thermal management system, so it manages the temperature of the battery to keep the battery from overheating, which can cause damage to it, or keep it from getting too cold. When the battery's cold, it also can't charge as fast, so they've got a very robust temperature management system in this battery pack. And then in some of the other higher end models that are coming up, we've already got the Porsche Taycan in the market. I haven't had a chance to drive that one yet, although I did get a chance to ride in one in a prototype last summer. The Taycan uses an 800-volt electrical system, which is a higher power system. It has support for up to 350 kilowatt charging capability. And Audi has another model, another EV coming out late this year, which is built on that same platform as the Taycan. That's called the E-Tron Gt. Very sleek, 4-door, coupe-like hatchback, similar in proportions to the Audi A7. And that vehicle is coming out towards the end of this year, although with what's going on right now, it may get pushed back into early 2021. All right, let's get to the bottom line. So, I think Audi succeeded in their stated goals with the e-tron. This car is very much an Audi in all respects. Anybody that's familiar with modern Audis and likes them, they're gonna love this vehicle. But it's not perfect. It's on the pricey side. This particular one is $85,000. Base models start about $67,000 before incentives, and that means it's not going to be a mainstream vehicle. But Audis aren't mainstream vehicles. They're premium brand. It's a premium brand. No problem there. The range is not great. I think it's more than acceptable for almost everybody. 204 miles. I drove 210 miles on this thing before I pulled into an Electrify America station. I still had 9 miles left showing on the range meter. So getting 220 miles of range is very, very realistic in normal weather conditions. And that's generally enough for almost everybody. Most people don't drive more than 40 miles a day. So, except for very long trips, that's not a problem. And I charged it up from almost 0 to 100% in about 45 minutes at an EA station at 150 kilowatts. There's over 400 Electrify America stations now across the country, plus hundreds more from ChargePoint, EVgo, and other network providers that are also starting to offer similar 150 kilowatt charging rates. So, you can pretty much drive this thing anywhere you want to go, just like with a Tesla, with a supercharger. You're just going to have to stop a little bit more frequently for those fast charges. finally, the biggest functional complaint I have about this thing is the touchscreen interface for the climate controls. You saw the split dual touchscreen system with the infotainment and navigation on the top, climate controls on the lower screen. The top part is fine for using media and maps and so on. The bottom screen for the climate controls is terrible. That interface is atrocious. Really hard to use while you're driving if you want to adjust anything, if you want to turn on the defogger, trying to get through that interface to turn on the window defogger, just does not work. Every manufacturer, this is not just Audi, every manufacturer needs to go back to just straight up rotary dials, physical controls for climate control, so that you can, give it a quick twist to adjust the temperature, adjust the fan speed, adjust the direction where you want the air to flow, and leave it at that. We don't need high tech for climate controls in cars, at least not while we're still driving. Now, I've complained a bit about that, and that's me. Some people like touchscreen interfaces in cars. I'm not one of them. But aside from that, that's not a deal killer. The rest of the vehicle is so great to drive. It's roomy, it's comfortable, it's quick, and it's electric, zero emissions. So if you're interested in a premium electric SUV, go check it out at an Audi dealer.
Keep up with all the hottest tech news and gadgets. Visit twit.tv. There you'll be able to find and subscribe to all our tech shows. Thanks for watching Hands on Tech.